Once we have created the buttons dynamically, the next step is to be able to press them to discover a letter of the guessed word. How can we do this? Well, let's go back to the XML file, and as part of the button control, let's indicate that we want to create the event handler for each of the buttons. We create the event handler, and in the code behind the corresponding event handler has been created. Because we are using a data template for each one of the buttons, the event handler is going to be linked to each one of the buttons of the Flex layout. Inside the event handler, I'm going to declare a variable equal to btn, which is equal to sender as button, since we will perform a conversion to a button type in order to get the letter start in the text property of the buttons. We did something similar in a previous lesson. Let's ask if the instance is not equal to null, that is, if it is really a button. Let's define a variable called letter that is equal to btn dot. Let's obtain what is the text of the button. And then let's lock the button so that it cannot be pressed again. True, the assignment of the property is enabled, that is equal to false. Finally, let's invoke a method called handleGuess that we have not created yet, passing it what is the letter that we have selected. The purpose of this method is to perform the logic processing to know if the player has lost or won the game. To do this, let's let Visual Studio help us in the creation of this method. Let's change this v to letter. And as part of the method, let's compare if the letter being guessed is already in the list of letters that have been previously selected. Then let's write if guessed.indexOf, let's pass as parameter letter, and let's ask if it is equal to -1 to know if the letter has been previously selected. In case the letter has not yet been discovered, let's add it to the list. Once we add the letter to the set of letters that have been selected, let's check if the letter is part of the guessed word. To do this, let's type if answer.indexOf, let's pass as parameter letter, and compare if it is greater than or equal to 0. With this line, we will know if the letter is part of the guessed word. If it is part of the guessed word, we will invoke the method called calculateWord, which, remember, is the one that allows us to generate the string with the underscores and the letters that have been discovered. Let's pass answer again, and the list guessed. Let's proceed to test the code. Let's press some letters, and notice that this time when we press a letter that is part of the guessed word, it is already being displayed in the label control. We can continue pressing more letters, and this is how we are showing which characters have been guessed. By logic, we should think that if we guessed one of the letters, then we should verify if the game has been won, and for it we are going to return to the handleGuess method, and we will invoke a method called checkIfGameWon. Let's create the method, and as part of the method, let's compare if spot-like, which is the property that contains the underscores and the letters of the guessed word. Let's perform a replace, removing the intermediate spaces between each letter. And let's compare if the result is equal to answer. That is, we're comparing whether the string that normally contains the underscores, already containing only characters that form the guessed word, is equal to the guessed word. If this is so, then it means that the player won. In order to notify the user that he won, we need a new property that allows us to display this message to the user. So I'm going to go to the graphical interface properties section and proceed to create one of the string type called message. Let's create its get and its set. Let's turn it into a full property and the set into a block body. We have to invoke onPropertyChange after the assignment. Once we have created the property called message, let's go back to the code. After this validation, let's set the message property equal to you win. Finally, let's copy the name of the property. Let's go to the XML code. Let's look for the control that displays messages to the user. It is this that we see here. And we're going to indicate that instead of showing a static string, we want to use a binding to the property called message. With this change that we have made, we're going to test once again the application. We're going to test some letters, and notice how as soon as we guess the correct word, we get this message that says you win. Finally, I'm going back to the XAML code, and as part of the vertical stack layout, I'm going to set a 10-unit spacing between the elements to make them look better. With this, we see a larger spacing between each of the controls.